Heroes, Chapter 5. The rec center is boarded up and abandoned now, the words Frenchtown Rec Center faded and barely visible above the front door. The door's red paint has turned a faint, sickly pink. My caves begin to run and my scarf is damp, and after a moment I realize it's not the moisture from my caves that has dampened my scarf. It's a bad luck place, people have said. When he says it's not his caves dampening his scarf, it shows that his eyes are tearing up, which shows us what a strong emotional response he has to this place. A place of doom, others added. In the old days, it had been known as Greer's Hall, and the children of Frenchtown, myself among them, often heard its tragic story. Not a tragic story at the beginning, however. The hall had been a place of happy events, gala dances, and fancy balls to mark occasions like New Year's Eve and the 4th of July. It became a traditional place for wedding receptions, the bridal party marching the length of 3rd Street to the hall after the wedding mass at St. Jude's. Until the wedding of Marie Blanche Touraine. Marie Blanche married a handsome Irishman by the name of Dennis O'Brien from the plains of North Monument after breaking off her engagement to Hervey Rochelle, the shipping room foreman at the Monument Comb Shop. At the reception, during a pause between the dinner and dancing, as Marie Blanche and Dennis cut the wedding cake, Hervey burst into the hall, guns blazing in his hands. A moment later, Marie Blanche lay bloody and dying in her wedding gown. A bullet entered Dennis O'Brien's spine, leaving him paralyzed for the rest of his life. Hervey hung himself that very evening in the tool shed behind the comb shop. That was the end of Greer's Hall as a festive gathering place. The doors were sealed and windows shuttered. Children shivered as they listened to the story of that day of doom and always hurried by the abandoned building. Some claimed that on windy nights when the moon was full and the sounds of moaning and weeping could be heard if you pressed your ear against the front door. It became a Frenchtown tradition for the children to listen at the door at midnight on the night of a full moon as a rite of passage. Before my turn arrived, however, Greer's Hall was given a reprieve and began a new existence. You can answer questions 1, 2, and 3 at this point. So pause the video and watch and answer those 3 questions. I was in the 7th grade. I was in the 7th grade the year that Nicole Renard came into my life, when the hall's transformation began. People rushed to the site one Saturday morning as word spread through the streets that carpenters and painters were attacking the building in a frenzy of activity. I rushed to the scene and watched in amazement as trucks and vans emblazoned with the words City of Monument drowned teams of workmen who we learned had been hired under the new municipal program. In the next few days, the men worked frantically, scraping and painting, replacing doors and windows, tarring the roof. But the work was haphazard. Workers dropped hammers, spilled paint, and stumbled over each other, and occasionally pulled brown paper bags from their pockets and took quick gulps from hidden bottles. It's like watching a Marx Brothers movie, said Eugene Rochelle, the barber whose tongue was as sharp as his razor. When the workers finally completed the job, the building still looked unfinished. The white paint didn't completely cover over the dark patches of mildew on the clapboards, or the shutters sagged next to the window. Look, someone called. As we watched, the sign that read Frenchtown Rec Center slid from its place above the front entrance until it hung at a drunken angle above the door. It's still a bad luck place, Albert Laurier of Laurier's drugstore had said. Okay, I lied to you. Now you can answer number 1 based on this reading, and you can still answer number 4 now. People nodded in agreement, and remembering the wedding reception of Marie Blanche Touraine. That night, someone crossed out the words on the sign and replaced them with Rec Center with a W in bright red paint. Although the sign was restored to the original wording, the place was known ever since as the Rec Center and to the people of Frenchtown. The center opened its door on the day after St. Jude's parochial school closed for summer vacation. I stood with the other kids at the 9 o'clock that June morning in front of the building. A tall, slim man stepped into view. A look of a lock of blonde hair tumbled over his forehead, and a smile revealing dazzling movie star teeth. "Good morning," he said. "My name is Larry LaSalle." "Is that his real name?" Joey LeBlanc asked in a whisper that carried over the crowd. He was often punished by the nuns for talking out of turn. "That's right, it's real," Larry LaSalle said, and for some reason the crowd applauded. His name sounds like a movie star. Do you think people would have applauded for him when they first met him, or do you think maybe uh, Francis's memory is warped by things he knows? Larry LaSalle had broad shoulders and of an athlete and the narrow hips of a dancer. He was both. He swung the bat with authority as he hit home runs in games in the sandlot next door, and later led us through vigorous exercises and calisthenics. He was also a dancer with a touch of Fred Astaire in his walk, his feet barely touching the floor. He could tap dance with a machine gun speed that made daring leaps across the stage. But he was most of all a teacher, leading classes in dancing, arts and crafts, organized a choral group, directing musical shows. You should be able to answer number 5 and 6. The rec center became my headquarters in seventh and eighth grade, a place away from the sidewalks and empty lots of Frenchtown. I had never been a hero in such places. Too short and uncoordinated for baseball, and too timid to join the gangs that hung around the street corners. I had no best friend, though Joey LeBlanc, who lived on the first floor of my three-decker, often went with me to the Plymouth on Saturday afternoons. He kept a steady commentary during the movie, like a radio announcer describing the action. He didn't like to read, and I loved roaming the stacks of the Monument Public Library, where I discovered Ernest Hemingway and F. Scott Fitzgerald and Jack London, and rushed home with an armful of books. Should be able to answer number 7 right now. Home was a tenement where I lived with my Uncle Louis, my father's brother, a silent giant of a man who was the yardman at the Monument Comb Shop. He took me in after my father died, cooked our meals, and cleaned the apartment. He drank 3 bottles of beer every night while listening to the radio, volume turned low, until bedtime at 11 o'clock. He seldom spoke, but I never doubted his affection. He patted me on the head, passing by as I read my books at the kitchen table, and listened solemnly as I told him of my day at school, a duty he required every night at supper. "You're a good boy, Francis," he'd tell me as he handed over my 50-cent allowance every Friday night. The loneliness of the tenement drove me to the rec center after school and on the weekends. Without talent for singing or dancing or arts and crafts, I finally joined calisthenics after Larry LaSalle made a speech urging everyone to participate in at least one activity. I picked a spot at the back row to avoid calling attention to myself, and Larry LaSalle didn't embarrass me by calling me to the front where the shorter kids belonged. Larry LaSalle was everywhere in the center, showing how strips of leather could be made into keychains, old wine jugs into lamps, lumps of clay into ashtrays. He tamed the notorious schoolyard bully, Butch Beautreau, convincing him that he could sing, coaching him patiently day after day until Butch's version of the dying cowboy brought tears to the eyes of everyone in the rec center's first musical productions, Autumn Leaves. But he still beats kids up on the schoolyard, Joey LeBlanc observed. Under Larry LaSalle's guidance, Eugene Bucciarati, tall and gawky and shy, became the hit of the show, dressed like a bum and dancing an intricate routine with ash cans, winning applause like a Broadway star. "You're all stars," Larry LaSalle always told us. Rumors told us that Larry LaSalle had also been a star, performing in nightclubs in New York and Chicago. Somebody brought a faded newspaper clipping showing him in a tuxedo standing beside a nightclub place card that read, "Starring Larry LaSalle." We knew little about him, and he discouraged questions. We knew that he was born in Frenchtown and that his family had left to seek their fortunes elsewhere. Larry had taken dance lessons at Madame Tourette's studio downtown as a boy and had won first prize in an amateur contest at Monument City Hall when he was 9 or 10. Why did he turn his back on show business and return to Frenchtown? No one dare ask him, although there were dark hints that he had gotten into trouble in New York City, a rumor Joey LeBlanc delighted in repeating with raised eyebrows and a knowing look. Dazzled by his talent and his energy, most of us didn't dwell on the rumors. In fact, the air of mystery that surrounded him added to his glamour. He was our champion, and we were happy to be in his presence. Nicole Renard began coming to the center that first winter and joined the dance groups. She had taken lessons in Albany and instantly caught the attention of Larry LaSalle. I'd watch her glide across the floor, catching flashes of her white thighs as she twisted and turned. She seemed to exist in a world of her own, like a rare specimen, bird-like, graceful she danced, separate from the rest of the dancers. She didn't join in any of the other classes or do exercises or crafts. She would just simply leave when dance classes were over. One day, as she headed for the exit, drops of perspiration on her forehead like raindrops on white porcelain, she said, "Hello, Frances." That same strange teasing in her voice that I'd heard when she warned me about falling off the banister. I gulped, coughed, managed to utter hello, but was unable to bring her name to my lips. She paused as if to say more. Our eyes met, and that same connection I'd felt at Sister Matilda's classroom. A moment later, she was gone, leaving behind a sweet fragrance mixed with the musty smell of her perspiration, and after the image of her body leaping through the air. She didn't remind me of St. Teresa anymore, but the girls at certain magazines at Laurier's drugstore, who sent my heart racing and made my knees liquid. Nicole Renard's visits to the rec center made my life there complete. That's why when Joey LeBlanc angered that's why Joey LeBlanc angered me when he said that he could feel the old doom hanging above the place. "You talk too much," I said, slamming the door behind me as we left the center one afternoon. "Doom," he pronounced. "Wait and see." Shivering now as the rain begins to fall, I turn away from the rec center, knowing that poor Joey LeBlanc, who died on a beach in Iwo in the South Pacific, had been right after all. She'd be able to answer all of the questions at this point.